Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to a new episode of One Mic where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about the season 4 finale of Snowfall entitled Fight or Flight. Normally I like to talk about, or at least attempt to talk about, the meaning behind the episode title, and in this case it's pretty obvious if you watch the episode. But man, great episode, great into the season, great season in general. I think this is Snowfall's strongest season. I think this was probably one of the better episodes of the season. It just lacked some of the like really heavy, like kind of like emotional scenes that we got in some of the earlier episodes, but there were probably great scenes in higher quantity in this episode than there generally are in other episodes. So I'm gonna get right into it. I don't want to spend too much time. I have another 30-minute video here, but there's a few things I want to talk about. I want to start by talking about what I didn't like about this episode, and that's nothing. I normally have issues with most episodes of any show, but I didn't have any issues with this one. I thought they handled everything pretty well. There is something that I kind of want to talk about that could be a potential issue. I'm still kind of like floating back and forth on how I feel about it, but that's something I want to talk about later because it kind of coincides with one of the good scenes that I want to talk about. So moving forward from cons, since there are none, I just want to talk about kind of not just, I'm going to talk about some of the scenes that I really liked in this episode, but I'm also going to talk about what I thought this season did well as a whole, and that kind of ties in with some of the scenes that I want to talk about. So the first scene that I really liked in this episode was the opening scene. It shows Alton at his, as a younger man back in his Black Panther days. He goes up to Franklin's school and gives them a what for on what his what his son will and will not be doing or saluting or repeating. And that scene gave us a lot of context to what Alton used to be like and where his motivations come from as far as like how he operates involving his son. And that was a solid opening scene. On its own, it's just a good scene, right? It gives you some context, right? But in concert with another scene, which is the scene where Alton goes on the radio and completely spills the beans, or threatens to anyway, it gives even more weight to that scene because we can understand better where Alton is coming from because we have an idea of what his mindset has been like for most of this time. Whereas like the time that we've seen him on the show, it's really just kind of been like, hey, he's back as less as Franklin's father and more so as Sissy's husband. And he's just kind of there. It's like, okay, yeah, he's over his drugs or whatever, or his alcoholism, whatever was bothering him. And he's just kind of been around. And they started to give him stuff to do this year with the shelter and whatnot. And, him doing what he did earlier, where he kind of, just where he went to Irene and decided to spill the beans, was something that I think put his character in a poor light in the public eye because they looked at him as a snitch. Like, oh, Alton's making it hot. Everything's going good, or at least trying to go good, and he's just making things worse. And that's kind of like that hood mentality, and I get that, and I felt that. Like, man, Alton, why couldn't you at least talk to him about it first, right? But we have this whole time we've been looking at Franklin as a protagonist, as the good guy. So even when Franklin's doing the wrong thing, as he's been doing most of this season, from our eyes, he's still the good guy. So if Alton goes and blows up the spot, now it's like, okay, well, you're putting Franklin in a bad position, and we like Franklin, so that makes you bad, right? But for me anyway, I can't speak for you guys, but for me, Alton made a full face turn. And when I say a full face turn, for those of you who have never watched professional wrestling, good guys are referred to as baby faces, and bad guys are referred to as heels. And if you have a good guy, let's say someone like The Rock, and who you all are familiar with, he's historically been a good guy. If he does something that kind of like makes him a bad guy, they call it a heel turn. And the same thing in reverse. If you're a bad guy and you somehow do something to make you a good guy, it's a face turn. And in that one scene, the scene where Alton's on the radio and Franklin's listening to it, he's pissed. Teddy's listening to it, he's pissed. And Franklin's just like, you know what? I'm gonna tell everything. Like I'm gonna do what Irene was not willing to do. I will give his name. I'll tell you his fake name right now. It's Reed Thompson. I'll give you his real name. I got pictures of him, because I'll tell you what they're not gonna do. They mess with the wrong guy. And now that made sense in context with the opening scene, because we see him on his Black Panther tip, like, yo, you're not gonna tell my son that he has to salute some flag. Like, we're not doing that. Like, we see where his rebellious nature comes from. So for him to go on that radio, like, I'll tell everybody what it is, because what you're not gonna do, you're not gonna put my son in danger, you're not gonna put my people in danger. I've had enough. You messing with the wrong one. The white man always trying to do this to us. No more. Like to me, he instantly became the hero in that moment. Like, he went from snitch to good guy in that moment. And in that moment, I was like, oh, he dead now, because you can't make a full heel turn like that and become a sympathetic character and expect me to continue to live. Like, expect me to expect you to continue to live. That's usually a sign that it's time for you to go. But I thought that was a great scene. I thought Teddy's reaction to it was great. I thought Franklin's reaction to it was great. I like that it tied back with the opening scene. So really good stuff there. I like the fact that they made Alton sympathetic in this episode. I thought that was really cool. Conversely, another thing this episode did that I liked, and what I just explained to you guys, Franklin did a full heel turn. Franklin's full-on bad guy at this point. And I really liked how, I don't know if it was the very next scene, but it couldn't have been more than 2 scenes later, after Alton blows up the spot on the radio. I don't know if they immediately cut to Franklin at the shelter or not, but like, let's just say for argument's sake they did. Maybe it was 2 scenes later, whatever. You follow up Alton's face turn with the beginning of Franklin's heel turn. So Franklin goes into the shelter, kicks tells the guy there, I'm in charge, I pay for all this, everybody can go. Kicks everybody out. Now he's putting innocent people's lives at risk on purpose, just so he can find and possibly kill his father. At this point, we don't know what he's going to do, but we do know that he talks to Teddy, and now all of a sudden he really wants to talk to Alton, who he's been avoiding ever since Alton talked to Irene. So that was the beginning of the full heel turn for Franklin, which I think is an interesting direction to take this show. I think that from the closing scene, we are to kind of interpret, a couple of the closing scenes, we are to interpret that Franklin is probably going to be pretty unlikable next season. And I'm looking forward to that. That's an interesting take, because like I said, we've been sympathetic to Franklin. We've liked Franklin this whole time. But he kicks everybody out. That was another great scene, I think. Just him and Leon just shouting at these people to get out, I thought was like, man, like, this is wild that they're doing this right now. Although I did like seeing Franklin and Leon together, no matter how terrible what they were doing was. I like seeing them riding in the car, listening to Alton on the radio in the car, going up. Like, I just like seeing them together. It was good to see that, because they've been at each other's throats all season. Another scene I liked, when Alton and Franklin meet up at his house, and they're having an interesting conversation. They're talking about how are we going to handle this situation? Because you're wanted, talking to Alton, and you're making it hot for me. Like, I don't really have any reason for you either. And they're having this discussion, and Franklin's trying to convince him to let everything go. And he's like, this is the CIA. Like, you can't think that you're going to blow them up like that, and they're just going to let you leave. And he's like, it's the CIA. I think Alton goes, were you scared of these guys? And then Franklin goes, of course I am, aren't you? And I thought, like, that was one of probably the most vulnerable that we've seen, to a degree, at least up to that point of Franklin, because I think that Franklin would never have admitted that if anyone else had been there. But the reality is, yeah, of course you're going to be scared of what the CIA is going to do to you. So I really like the fact that he admitted, like, yes, I am scared of them, and aren't you scared of them? Like, I thought that was a good scene. I mean, I thought that was the start of what ended up being a fully good scene, because right after that line, we hear Scully outside. We seen Scully earlier in the episode on full, like, I'm killing everybody mode. So Scully busts in there. They have a shootout. That was a really exciting scene to me. I liked how it was filmed. They had a good shot from above, looking down on the hallways in the house. And you could see, like, Scully moving down the hallway, and then, like, the openings to the bedrooms where Franklin and Alton were hiding at. And, they exchange shots. They both get hit, Alton and Scully, that is. And I thought that was an exciting scene, not an incredibly like emotional or powerful one, but it was exciting. Um, the Another scene that I really liked was the face off scene toward the end. So you had the Saint family and Teddy all kind of like at each other's throats, and they're all pointing the guns at each other. Everyone's shouting what needs to happen, what blah 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 blah. Pretty suspenseful scene, but ultimately it ends with Sissy convincing Teddy to let them go because her and Alton are going to move to another country, which the name escapes me. I don't remember what country it was, but yeah, they agree to leave. So I found that surprising because I didn't think that Teddy would even agree to let them leave. And I also don't understand why Alton would agree to leave in that moment. I can take from it that he wanted to do it to protect Franklin, because that's what we've been told throughout the entirety of this season. And particularly in this episode, that he's there to protect everything he's doing is to protect Franklin. But it was interesting to see him just so staunchly like, we need to. This needs to be the last. This needs to be the line in the sand for what white people are going to do to us and what the government is going to do to us, and we need to take a stance. And then in that moment, he's like, "All right, I'll go." Like I don't know. I just found that to be a little odd, and I found it odd that Teddy would allow it to happen. But it ultimately played out how I expected, because I had mad question marks on that scene. Like, this doesn't feel like this is how this should end. Like, I don't feel like they should just be able to get away with this and go. So, yeah, that was a scene that it ultimately came around to end a different way. But I'll get to that in a moment. The last thing I want to talk about as far as like scenes that I really enjoyed was the scene with Melanie at the end. Franklin goes in there and is kind of just like, just threatening her, like as he loves to do. And she basically says, I'll leave you alone if you admit to me that you killed my father. And I really like how Franklin answered with his face. Like, he didn't, and it was a very kind of like a combative, like, I don't want to answer this and I shouldn't answer this, but I'm going to do it anyway kind of look. Like, fine, all right, yeah, you might want to know. Yeah. And it was very subtle, and I really like that. I like that he did that. What I didn't like, and well, I'm not going to say I didn't like, but what I'm conflicted about was the cane toss at the end. So at the end, he hangs the cane on a chair and then he walks away, in a normal walk. And that, to me, is always going to align with Kaiser Sose and Usual Suspects, which I would think is going to relate to the audience. If the audience also connects this to Kaiser Soze and the Usual Suspects, they're going to take from this that Franklin's been faking. And that's not what I think the scene is meant to tell us, because there's not enough support for that throughout the course of the season, because I don't see what Franklin stands to gain by faking himself being hurt. I could see that in a moment, to where like you make yourself look vulnerable so that somebody lets their guard down and then you take them out. But he wasn't doing that throughout the season. He was making bad decisions. If he's faking, how do you explain him getting the pain that he had, the physical pain he had, and the argument that he had with Leon in the club? I think it was like episode 2 or 3, fairly early in the season. Then the episode maybe like 2 weeks ago where he got into the fight with Jerome, where we know the results of that fight were way worse because of his injuries. Like, I don't think he's been faking it this whole time, because there's no evidence to support that throughout the course of the season. There's no motive to do that. There's nothing that he has gained from it. But I think that's what you tell the audience when you give something so similar to Kaiser Sose in The Usual Suspects. What I think was actually meant to be conveyed is that enough time has passed for Franklin to be better now, and to show us that the Franklin that we're going to get in season 5 is a renewed, healthy, and powerful Franklin. An angry Franklin, a bad guy. Like, he's going to be ready next year. And I think that's what we're meant to take away from it. Because the scene that preceded that was the scene that I alluded to earlier, where Teddy shows up to kill Alton. And they're in whatever country they're in. Again, I forget. But whatever country they're in, Teddy shows up there. Sissy has already left. So Alton's the only one there. And they don't show what happens. So I think the intrigue is meant to kind of be like, okay, did he kill? I think he probably killed Alton. Like that. Like, I don't see any way that doesn't happen, unless Sissy shows up and kills him or whatever, right? But I think he probably killed Alton. Did he kill them both? Did he wait for Sissy to return? Did he kill Sissy after did he kill Sissy before he even entered in there? Because she had left. He could have killed her outside, and now he's coming in to kill him too. So like, that paints a lot of good intrigue for next season about how things are going to play out when, if Franklin finds out if this actually happened. You know, Teddy said he was going to be gone for a while. I kind of clicked at that moment like, he might go after them, because I'm like, it just didn't make sense to me that he would allow that to happen in that moment. They just don't leave loose ends like that. But that, my point in even talking about that scene initially was that scene tells us that there has been a significant passage of time. Like, they left on the plane and now they are in whatever country this is, and they seem fully relaxed and in a routine. Like, so to me, that conveys they've been there for a while. And then the scene that follows that is Franklin talking to Melanie, and she's in Texas. So, like, I don't think that was meant to tell us that Franklin been faking. I think that was just meant to tell us that enough time had passed, that now he's healed, now he's ready, and he's gonna be ready to go to war in season 5. And I think that's what that was meant to tell us, not that he'd been faking all year, because there's not really any evidence to support that. I wouldn't like that. So I that's why I said, like, kind of a con, you know, at the top of the video. But I think that could just be a mistake in telling people one thing. But like that's only gonna matter if you've seen The Usual Suspects. If you haven't, you're not gonna get that reference, and it's not gonna matter. So I don't know if that's what they were going for. If they're trying to tell me he was faking all season, I don't buy it. I don't see anything for that. Like, that doesn't work for me. But yeah, Franklin goes full heel turn. He admits that. He, in the scene prior to us catching up with Sissy and Alton, we see that Louis and Jerome have returned to the club. They say they want out. They want to go their own way, but they're still willing to buy product from Franklin. He meets with Leon, tells him, like, yeah, they crazy, man. I don't know what's going on. Leon's like, actually, I want out too. And then Franklin basically tells him, like, nobody's out. Like, I sacrificed everything for y'all. All y'all gonna fall in the line, and I'm gonna see to that, and we gonna be a family again. And it was a very firm heel turn for Franklin. So I think that's an interesting interesting direction to take Franklin. But I'm excited to see it. So I'm also really curious to find out if he actually did kill, if he killed just Alton. 1, does Franklin find out? I think so. But 2, does Franklin care? Does he do something? I think he does, because I think there's still a good guy in there. But interested to see how he responds to that. Interested to see how that affects their dynamic. Last thing I want to talk about, they just said, we don't care about Gustavo anymore. Gustavo hasn't done anything since like episode 5 or 6. Like, they just got like nothing. Only thing Gustavo did in this episode was receive information. That's it. He barely even spoke. It was like, hey, here's the information you asked for, gracias, and then that was it. But yeah, Lucia's alive somewhere. Big whoop. I didn't care about Lucia when she was on the show. I didn't care about Gustavo at that time. They managed to find a way to make Gustavo interesting, and now he's separated from Teddy. So if I'm gonna be getting a Gustavo and Lucia storyline in season 5, I already don't like it. But that's for another time. But in a day, great episode, great season, great ending, lots of great scenes, lots of great moments this year. Great writing on this show, great acting. They're really crushing it. So really happy to end Snowfall on a high note. Happy that it was a good season, that we were able to cover a lot of great episodes. I don't think there was any episode that I thought was actually bad. My biggest issue was the one that opened up with Teddy in the forest. Like, that was the only issue I really had all season with this show. So happy to get a successful and good season 4. Sad to see it go. It was probably going to be a while before we get season 5, but really glad to see that a show like this is firing on all cylinders and building an audience. So leave your comments on what you thought about the episode, what you thought about the season. What was your interpretation of the Kane scene? Do you think he was faking? Do you have evidence of, where you can kind of look back like on The Sixth Sense and be like, oh yeah, there is proof that everybody was dead the whole time. Spoiler alert. But is there proof that he was faking it the whole time? I think it was just meant to convey passage of time, and this is what Franklin is going, like, he's leaving, like the closing shot is him leaving out of this church or whatever where he meets Melanie at, and walking normally and confidently. And I think that, like I said, I feel like that's meant to convey strength. That's meant to convey he's better, he's healthy, and he's going to be ready to go next season. So, like, that's my interpretation of it. But if you have proof that, or any evidence that you feel supports that he's been faking the whole time, or what he has to gain from that, drop it in the comments. We can talk it out. And I will see you guys, I guess, season 5 for Snowfall. But if you are still here and you are still listening, I will be covering The Handmaid's Tale week to week, which starts next Wednesday. So transitioning right out of Snowfall, right into Handmaid's Tale. So I don't know if you watch Snowfall and you also watch The Handmaid's Tale, but if you don't, I highly recommend it. The Handmaid's Tale is one of the best shows on television right now, and I'll be covering that week to week for season 4 starting next week. So I'll see you guys then. Peace.